This show is sponsored by Facebook. Facebook has taken steps to better secure their platforms. What's next? Their support of updated internet regulations to set new standards for data portability, privacy, and elections. Learn more at about.fb.com/regulation.
Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper, and we start today with our health lead and a grim warning from Dr. Anthony Fauci, who says it's time for the United States to hunker down and prepare for a tough fall and winter. In an interview this afternoon, Fauci, the country's top infectious disease expert, called the current coronavirus trends disturbing, noting that the United States is averaging 40,000 new cases and 1,000 deaths every day right now. Fauci warned those numbers are expected to go up again as cooler temperatures force more people to spend more time indoors. Now, despite this bad news, President Trump continues to say that he is handling the pandemic well. Compared to whom? This is the death rate in the EU in blue. That's the United States in orange. The EU has 100 million more people than the United States, but their death rate is half. The virus is not contained in the United States. Testing is not available for most Americans. Millions of children in this country cannot go to school. Millions of Americans remain unemployed because of the pandemic. The current plan is not working. Dr. Fauci also gave a striking reality check for people who think a vaccine will mean a return to normal. Fauci says that even if a vaccine is ready by the end of this year, and that's a big if, he does not think the world can return to the same levels of normalcy as pre-coronavirus until the middle or end of next year. CNN's Nick Watt kicks off our coverage today.
President Trump is still ignoring the facts and playing down the pandemic.
We're rounding the turn. You see what's happening. You see the numbers are plunging.
I'm sorry, but I have to disagree with that because we're plateauing at around 40,000 cases a day, and the deaths are around 1,000.
And 30 states are seeing more than 5% of tests coming back positive. That's still too high. Remember, the 1918 flu pandemic surged again when it got cold and killed many, many more people. So could this.
I just think we need to hunker down and get through this fall and winter because it's not going to be easy.
The president also still ignoring the CDC's suggestions. Very few masks at his MAGA rally in Michigan last night.
It just deeply puzzles me, Sanjay. How did we get here? Imagine you were an alien who landed on planet Earth. When you went around, you saw some people not wearing them and some people wearing them, and you tried to figure out why, and it turned out it was their political party. And you would scratch your head and think, this is just not a planet that has much promise for the future.
I'm not afraid. The good Lord takes care of me. If I die, I die.
The older you are, the more likely you are to die. The CDC now says 0.003% of infected under 18s are dying, but that climbs to a sobering 5.4% for those 70 and older. Still, many places now trying out an ounce or two of normal. Limited indoor dining now allowed in Orange County, California. Bars across Florida can open half capacity starting Monday. And some fans in the stands at last night's NFL season opener in Kansas City.
If you're talking about getting back to a degree of normality, which resembles where we were prior to COVID, it's going to be well into 2021, maybe even towards the end of 2021.
Now, we have just heard that Miami, which was a hotspot at one point, is going to move into phase 2 reopening Monday, and that opens the door to in-person teaching in schools. The governor of Florida said today that current data just doesn't support the idea that kids can fuel secondary infections. But today we also heard from some researchers in Utah who say that 12 kids who caught COVID in daycare centers passed the virus on to at least a dozen other people. 2 of those kids showed no symptoms whatsoever and still infected other people. Jake?
All right, Nick, thank you so much. Let's bring in CNN's chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta. And Sanjay, you just spoke with the head of Operation Warp Speed. That's the White House effort to find a coronavirus vaccine. What did he have to tell you?
Well, we wanted to sort of really talk about two things, around the likelihood of this vaccine being available. You want to know if it's effective and you want to know if it's safe. So those are the 2 points we really hit on. Here's what he said specifically about the idea that we would have an effective vaccine within the next few months.
If we can make them advance prior to the election day, we will. And if we can make them advance after the election day, we will. It's totally irrelevant. It's very unlikely that that number happens in October. It's more likely that it happens in November, and it's even more likely that it happens in December.
So you get an idea of what he's talking about there. He's saying basically you have two groups. Half the people get the vaccine, half people get the placebo. Is there enough of a difference in the infection rate between the two groups to say, yes, this is definitively working? And you heard him, Jake. He said most likely that would be most likely in December, maybe earlier. The second big question, Jake, is safety. They say that they want to wait for the phase 3 trials to be done before they determine whether they would approve this or authorize it. But what does that mean? When is the trial actually done? I asked him about that as well.
If you look into the databases of the FDA on the overwhelming majority of adverse events associated with vaccines happen within the first, actually I was told 42 days after completing the immunization regimen, and maybe 2 months after completing. It doesn't mean things may not happen way after. They could. They're extremely rare.
So, Jake, just what he's saying there, put it together, is that even for people who are enrolling right now, you remember, you get a shot, you wait a month, you get another shot, and he's saying 42 days to 2 months after that is probably where they're going to be looking for initial safety concerns. Point being, if you look at the calendar, Jake, that puts that really into sort of mid-late November at the earliest to get that kind of data back.
So, Sanjay, you have 3 girls doing remote education. I have 2 kids doing the same. Let me just raise something with you that really bothers me about, you and I have been talking about this for months, the idea that our kids can't go to school safely because they can't get tested. A friend of mine has a son at Northeastern University, and I believe this is correct, that school requires all students to get tested every 72 hours, every 3 days, and if you don't get tested, then you lose access to campus, etc. Why can't, I get that Northeastern is a school with, an endowment and money and whatever, but why can't our government have that happen for our public schools and private schools for our kids so that there is testing, so that they get tested every 3 days and we know that they're safe? Why not?
Yeah, look, Jake, the answer to that question is they absolutely could have done this. To be clear, there could have been an Operation Warp Speed for testing like we've just been talking about for the vaccine. And I don't think I'm exaggerating or describing a fantasy land when you say it is possible you could have had at-home testing at this point where you could test yourself at home, even on a daily basis, like in the morning when you're brushing your teeth. You could do a test like that, comes back positive, you stay home. You keep taking the test until it comes back negative, you can go out again. People have described this, and that could have been possible because there were tests that were authorized back in May, antigen tests. Now, they're not necessarily as accurate, but if you're doing them daily, you really improve the overall impact of these tests. We didn't really invest in this. We could have really ramped up manufacturing around those types of tests, invoked the Defense Production Act, all the things that we've talked about for months. But I got to tell you, and I understand your frustration because I share it, and I think it was a conscious decision not to do that. I interviewed the Admiral Giroir yesterday, the testing czar for the country, and he says, yeah, we're going to get there now to that point. He recognized the importance, but it's still probably going to be close to the end of the year when we have that level of testing available in this country.
It's not only safer for our kids and safer for the teachers and the faculty, and also you could do it at businesses too. It would have saved money. The economy has been crippled because of this. It's so frustrating. Sanjay, a new study from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention shows that adults who tested positive for coronavirus were about twice as likely to have reported dining at a restaurant. It doesn't specify the study if they dined indoors or outdoors. Dr. Fauci also just addressed the study. Take a listen.
So if we want to get back to the normal existence of being able to enjoy being in a restaurant, the best way to do that is to get the community level of infection at the lowest level possible.
He seems to be suggesting we're doing this bass backwards, the idea that people are going to restaurants and then getting this disease, we should clamp down on the disease before we open the restaurants, especially indoor. Texas, Miami, allowing 50% capacity indoors at restaurants. New York is going to allow 25% capacity. Is it safe, indoor eating?
I think it's very hard to justify it as safe, Jake. I mean, first of all, there are criteria by which, states, communities could open restaurants. These gating criteria. No one paid attention to them almost from the day they were released. No one even cared about them. But there are criteria, two phases of going downwards for 14 days, having enough testing, a low positivity rate, all the things that we've talked about. The problem with indoor dining, as you can probably guess, first of all, indoors is going to be far worse than outdoors. But you can't keep a mask on.
Right.
I mean, that's basically it. You can try and do lower, sort of occupancy. It depends how large the space is. I've talked to several restaurateurs about this. They're trying to figure out their HVAC systems and doing all this stuff. But they're trying their best. Many people call me and say, hey, we're doing the best we can do. Problem is you're dealing with a contagious virus inside, transferring among people, on surfaces, maybe even with people who can't wear masks because they're eating and drinking.
Fauci also said that even if a vaccine is ready by the end of this year, we may not be able to get back to anything remotely resembling normalcy until the end of 2021. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, this is all about how quickly this rolls out. Again, going back to my conversation with Moncef Slaoui, the head of Operation Warp Speed, maybe a few million doses available in the next few months with a lot of ifs in there if the data pans out, maybe tens of millions, maybe by the end of the year. But then, we're talking 200, 300 million people to get to that 60, 70% of the country being vaccinated. It's a lot. As well, Jake, the FDA is going to accept a 50% efficacy of the vaccine. So if it works, 50%, they may authorize this. Well, that may mean that even if we get vaccinated, there's a lot of people still need to wear masks and keep physical distance.
All right, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, thanks so much, and love to your three little girls. I know this remote education thing sucks.
You too, Jake. Have a good weekend.
All right. It seems like President Trump never met a scare tactic he did not like until COVID came around. How his reason for downplaying the virus goes against what he has clearly been doing for more than 4 years. Plus, America burning, raging fires burning up and down the West Coast. The story of an area the size of New Jersey. We're live on the ground there.
Facebook continues to take critical steps to better secure their platforms. That includes more than tripling safety and security teams to 35,000 people and partnering with security researchers and law enforcement. They support updating internet regulations to address today's challenges and hold companies, including theirs, accountable for combating foreign election interference, protecting people's privacy, and enabling safe and easy data portability between platforms. Learn more at about.fb.com/regulation.
Today we remember the nearly 3,000 people who were killed during the 9/11 terrorist attacks. At a time when more than 190,000 Americans have lost their lives to coronavirus, it is a time of trauma. In our politics lead, President Trump is still defending his decision to downplay the virus to project calm, ignoring the experts. He told a packed, largely maskless crowd that the virus is now coming to an end. That's not true, leaving some Trump supporters indifferent to the threat, as CNN's Jeremy Diamond now reports.
After a moment of silence on Air Force One, today President Trump commemorating the 19th anniversary of 9/11 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
19 years ago on this day, at this very hour on this field, 40 brave men and women triumphed over terror and gave their lives in defense of our nation. 9/11, we'll never forget.
As Trump honored the heroes of Flight 93, Vice President Mike Pence marked the moment at the World Trade Center Memorial, alongside Joe Biden, the Democratic presidential nominee. A brief reprieve from a campaign roiled by Trump's damning admission to journalist Bob Woodward that he intentionally misled Americans about the coronavirus.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want to create a panic.
And his false defense.
Why did you lie to the American people, and why should we trust what you have to say now?
Such a terrible question, and the phraseology, I didn't lie. What I said is we have to be calm, we can't be panicked.
There were times when I was out there telling the American public how difficult this is, how we're having a really serious problem. You know, and the president was saying it's something that's going to disappear, which obviously is not the case. So when you downplay something,